Hey everyone, welcome back again to my channel. Today I've got a special little treat for you. So Deimos actually has a few weapon augments that are locked behind Entrati rank 4, and there's this little curious one for the Soma Prime that is called the Hata-Satya. You can actually get this by ranking up to rank 4 and selecting it as your reward, otherwise it will cost you 20k standing to purchase. This is a very interesting mod that states you will gain 1.2 extra % crit chance for each hit against an enemy, but it resets once you reload or holster. Upon testing, I learned that this is not flat crit chance, it is a mod crit chance. So what it means is it uses this 30% that Soma Prime has to scale off of. It also has a cap of 500%. So you cannot get more than 500% mod bonus using the Augment. Regardless, this Augment is still extremely powerful, and that's what I'm here to show you today. You can actually even use the Soma Prime in Eidolon hunts quite efficiently because of this Augment. We will be using Amalgam Serration in our first slot so that we can benefit from the extra 25% sprint speed in our Archwing. Then we will be using Split Chamber for the Multishot. We will also be using Vigilante Armaments, since this is a Rivenless build, and otherwise usually Multishot is being neglected since there's no other sources of it. We will follow that up with Hellfire, the only elemental mod on the build as usual, since we will be using Shock Trooper to make radiation. We will then be using Vile Acceleration as one of the mods so that you can crank up your hits faster and sooner while also doing more damage to the Eidolon. The minus 15% damage isn't really a big issue since it's minus 15% base damage and not total damage. So while you have sources such as Vigorous Swap and Arcane Rage and Serration, you're really only just knocking one rank off. Our next mod we have on our list is Vital Sense. Since we are always missing sources of critical damage, this is a mandatory mod on every single crit build. Then down here we have our Augment as I showed you earlier, and the interesting thing to note here is it actually replaces Point Strike in the build. Even on a Rivenless build, you don't even need to run Argon Scope since it scales all the way up to 500%, and I'll actually show you how it has a unique synergy with Multishot just like sniper rifles that makes it so that Argon Scope isn't even needed. This is why we must run both Split Chamber and Vigilante Armaments to get the most out of this Augment. Finally, we will be running Stabilizer again because Soma's recoil hits like a truck. It's not as bad as Trumna's, but it kind of goes all over the place and it's very shaky to control. Even if you're aiming at the Eidolon, without this mod, you're very likely to just shoot in circles around the limb instead of actually hitting the limb. Also, we absolutely need it to offset the fact that we have an accuracy penalty from using heavy caliber, and I will explain why we are using this mod. So this is a test of what happens if you use a Soma Prime without Stabilizer in the Exilus slot. As you can see here, I'm marking the point that I will aim at on the wall. If I hip fire, it seems to be okay, but actually that's a pretty big spread and you're going to be missing a lot of your shots on the Synovia. If I scope in, you can really see how bad the spread can be. If I put Stabilizer back on and we take a look at this again, I'm going to hip fire at this waypoint one more time. It's a little bit hard to see the difference, but you can immediately tell the reticle doesn't seem to be bouncing around as much. If I scope in, you can see the hip fire is still quite inaccurate, but if I shoot while I'm scoped in, you can see my shots seem to cluster more around this predefined circle in the middle instead of trying to draw a circle around the outside. This will help a lot trying to hit the limbs, and because of this, my Soma ended up being a 5 Forma build, despite not even having a Riven, because I would need polarities in every single slot except one, so that I could run both the Exilus and still fit in heavy caliber. Although Soma Prime has a 200 magazine size, we still want to run our synth set on our pistol, which in this case I'm bringing Pandero, as well as on our Sentinel. We want Synth Fiber and Synth Deconstruct so that we can holster reload. Because this still technically is a meme run, we will be bringing a Sarpa with Shattering Impact that's modded for attack speed through Quickening, Primed Fury, and Gladiator Vice. I will also bring Amalgam Organ Shatter so that in case I hit the heavy attack by accident, it will end sooner with a faster windup. Tech Gravity is always there as utility in case I need to pull in Vomvalists to kill them with Propa. Modus Impact is there so that I'm less likely to be knocked down when I'm in the air. You can increase this further by modding it onto your Sweeper Sentinel weapons, which means it can use the Modus Setup mod. While you're at it, you might as well throw on your 4 Vigilante mods, since this will also apply to your Soma Prime to boost its critical hits. Now we're going to take a look at the Volt build for this setup. I'm going to be running Arcane Rage, since there isn't really a reason to not run it. This is a refreshable Arcane, so we're going to be keeping it at rank 5, since it's not going to have any issues in our rotation. My second Arcane that I'm running here is Arcane Acceleration. You might be thinking, why am I not running Avenger if I'm not even running Point Strike or Argon Scope on my weapon? This is because the Augment is actually so powerful, you do not need any other source of critical chance on your own builds except the Augment itself. The rest of it you can source from the Vigilante set bonus and Hero crit buffs, or even a Darza's if you want to bring that, but there is no reason to waste an Arcane slot or weapon mod slot on further crit chance. Now if we take a look at the Soma Prime here, I'm going to go into a little bit more detail about how this Augment works. I'm going to spawn the Dracar Manic Bombards, and if I scope in and shoot them, you will see in the top left corner I'm gaining 1.2% crit chance for each shot I hit. And you can see it ramps up very quickly with sustained fire when I have Arcane Acceleration on, so you can only imagine how fast it will go once I use Vile Acceleration as well. As you can see, the buff disappears as soon as you reload or as soon as you holster. It doesn't matter when you do it, it will always reset and you're going to have to start again anew from 0. So what this means is I have to proc Vigorous Swap in advance. I need to set it up that I have time to build up my shots on a pre-fire to get the crit chance bonus to make it worth having not run any other crit chance mods, and so that I can take down the limb and I still have my Vigorous Swap buff active. Now how can I do this? When you holster a weapon, you get a Vigorous Swap buff that lasts 3 seconds. When you switch back to your previous weapon, you get another holster buff that's 3 seconds long. If you switch back to your weapon while a Vigorous Swap buff is active, it will instantly refresh it to a max duration. But we don't want this, because this means you might get a 3-second buff that gets cut short to say 1.5 because it will get refreshed with another 3-second buff when you switch back to Soma again. But there's a caveat to this. If you can switch your weapon twice very quickly, as I've shown here, before the Vigorous Swap icon even shows up in the corner, it actually will not immediately refresh your buff. You will get a 3-second buff that will end and then be followed up immediately with another 3-second buff. So in essence, you're actually getting 6 seconds of a Vigorous Swap buff. But it doesn't even stop here. There's a little bit of a weird interaction. You'll see when I swing, Vigorous Swap does not activate until a little bit afterwards. And if I re-aim my gun, it also will not activate until a little bit afterwards. Now if I do this a little bit faster, you can see I can cut down the delay between each, but I still have this big delay at the start before the first Vigorous proc comes up. This delay is actually very useful for what we are trying to do here with the Augment. If you set up your melee swing and re-aim your rifle before the first delayed Vigorous Swap sets up, then you're still going to get that 6-second buff of Vigorous Swap where they go 3 seconds back to back, but you will also gain that 3-second delay before anything happens. So what does this mean? You can proc your Vigorous Swap this way 3 seconds earlier to have it start 3 seconds later, and then you will still get a full 6 seconds buff. What this really allows us to do, and is really powerful here, is that now we can set this up for 9 seconds in advance. 9 seconds in advance is way more than enough time to set up your Vigorous Swap and start shooting the limb to build up your Augment's crit chance buff, and then still have all buffs active by the time the shield drops so that you can just dump it in and break the limb. Another thing that I'd like to show you is this Augment has a very fun interaction with Multishot. It works the same way as how sniper combos work and is why Multishot is so important on snipers to start out with. Not only are snipers slower firing weapons, but when you shoot once and your Multishot hits multiple times, the combo mechanic counts those extra hits produced by your Multishot. So you can shoot once and have it count say 2, 3, or 4 times into your combo counter. Now for this Augment, it works works the same way. If you have extra multi-shot and you only shoot once and 3 bullets come out, it will count as 3 hits for the augment. So instead of increasing your crit chance by 1.2%, it will give you 3.6%. Now once you put this all together, where you have your multi-shot and your crit chance buff from your augment, as well as your higher fire rate, and also your Vigorous Swap, you just create one absolute monster of a weapon. The synergy is so strong here that comparing a Soma that does not have an augment to a build that uses the augment is on 2 completely different levels. It's like you're not even using the same weapon. The Soma Prime without the augment was never really used in hunts because it has one of the lowest damage per bullet of any weapon in the game, and this makes it extremely ammo inefficient and has issues with the time to kill on the Synovia. But the augment comes and saves the day and pretty much completely revitalizes this weapon into something more akin to modern weapons like the Baza or the Tenora, where although they dump their ammo pretty quickly, they can still destroy the limbs in a pretty fast fashion without running out of ammo within the first few limbs. So now we're going to take a look at how this weapon performs in a simulated environment. I'm going to be setting up my Shock Trooper and then proccing my Arcane Rage, as well as setting up my method of proccing my Vigorous Swap, and then I will build up a little bit of combo for the augment on the leg first. And then I will place the shield and shoot the thigh to show the simulation against a Terrorist Synovia, and you will see here it has a very respectable time to kill. It's very similar to the Trumna that DE released, which we know was a pretty strongly power creeping weapon. It wasn't necessarily on the level of the Sepulchrum, but as a Rivenless weapon, it still managed to destroy limbs decently fast in the simulation. The fact that the Soma Prime can come back with just this one augment and match a new weapon that has really high damage per bullet stats, a decently high crit stat, and a decent fire rate just really shows how much this augment shines. If you're looking towards a Riven build for this Soma, you would most likely end up dropping heavy caliber, and the optimal Riven at this point would be a critical damage multi-shot neg Riven. This lets you maximize on the critical damage that is missing on this build, while further boosting your multi-shot, which will double dip in not only the damage, but also into the scaling of the augment itself. So not only will you do more damage, but your damage will scale up faster. Feel free to take your Soma Prime into hunts now with this build and see what it's like. I promise you it won't disappoint. Thank you for watching this video, and I'll see you all next time.